Hello everyone, this is Dr. Sowrwita from the Department of English, and today's session is on cross-cultural communication. Before we go to explain what exactly is cross-cultural communication, let us first understand what exactly is culture. Now, the word culture has multiple definitions. Now, in simple words, what we can say is that culture is a complex compilation of beliefs, customs, knowledge, traditions that a human being acquires while being a member of a particular society. Now, this word culture is derived from the Latin word cultura, which means taking care of the body and predominantly the mind. Okay. Now, culture is also a matter of constructing a relationship between oneself and the world. Culture can exist in micro and macro system. Now, you must have heard about these terminologies like national culture, regional culture, food culture, corporate culture. So when we talk about national culture, it is a macro system. And when we talk about corporate culture, it's a culture within an organization. So it is a micro system. Now, our culture has a significant impact on our attitudes and our behavior. It shapes our attitudes and our behaviors. Now, different cultures have different language. They have their own folk culture. Their food culture would be different. Their clothes and dressings would be different. They have a different working schedules. Their religious practices would be different. Even humor would be different. Even the child rearing methods might be different. The mannerisms are different. So first, let's look at the characteristics of the culture. The first is acquired. Now, acquired culture is something that, an individual observes the surroundings and they acquire that kind of skills. So what we learn is from our family members, from our teachers, from our schoolmates. And so what is already existent in a particular culture and which we learn, observing, the people who belong to this particular culture. And based on that, we are groomed on the basic rules of, how we speak, how our gestures would be, how our expressions would be. The next is the collective culture. This is shaped by the collective understanding. So different regions, different countries, and they have a particular culture, they follow particular traditions, they have a different knowledge systems, they have particular laws, and this is shared by, people within that particular culture. It thrives within the people. Next, we have the value system. Now, every culture, they follow certain values, which, these values help us, to trust certain ways of thinking and behaving. For example, in the Asian culture, there's a lot of importance given on respecting the elders, being disciplined. Also in other cultures, it could be on teamwork, on your punctuality. So these are some of the values, which are very specific to different cultures. They give a lot of importance. And people of that culture, they respect others, who follow those particular cultural values. And then we have the stability. Now, there are certain core values which doesn't really change over time. It kind of, it stays for a longer time. And even if changes are happening, the changes happen very slowly. So, for example, look at the institution of marriage. Okay, so this kind of a bond is, especially, in Asian societies also, we see that, this is given much importance. And if someone goes against these values, it is not something that would be acceptable. And lastly, the differentiators. Differentiators, you can say, what are the, you can say the different culture, people belonging to a particular culture, they share a common values, which is again different from another culture, which is followed by different sets of people. So it's basically the differentiator, it separates one group from the another. And even within that culture, different individuals can be unique, but together, they are part of the same culture. Now let's come to cross-cultural communication. Now, before we go on to explain what is cross-cultural communication, we are also familiar with certain terminologies like multicultural, cross-cultural, intercultural. Now, what is the difference between the three? Multicultural is simply like a salad bowl. like which a multicultural neighborhood where people from different cultures, they're staying together. It could be, for example, from someone from Asian culture, someone from European culture, someone from African culture. So cross-cultural communication it is understanding the differences and similarities of different cultural groups, so that we can effectively participate within our organization. It's all about how you adapt to people from different cultures who come from different cultures. They have own set of values. So nowadays it is very common in our workplace, where people from different cultures, they come together and they work. And it's very important to understand the influence of the cultural factors in the workplace. Only if you can effectively communicate with people from different cultures, the businesses will be thriving. So the better the cross-cultural abilities are, the better is the work environment, and there is, this will avoid misunderstanding, communication gaps, and the environment will be very congenial. This is a sample image. Now, why is cross-cultural importance? Now, you see, after the COVID-19, our workplaces have, there's a change in the workplaces. Remote teams, they're working together from different parts of the world. And, their, potential clients would be from a different culture. So, it is very important to understand, the communication patterns of the employees and even the stakeholders in order to successfully run the business. And it is very common in today's world, as I've already said, that people from different parts of the culture, they work together. So it is how one is able to adapt irrespective of the cultural values, what one comes up with. It makes a lot of difference, because as I've already explained before, that culture shapes our attitudes and behavior. Now, while communicating with the individual or the groups from various cultural backgrounds, the transmission of knowledge and behavior play a very important role. How we talk to the other individuals coming from different culture, how our gestures are, that play a very important role in effectively communicating with other groups. So this is why, it is important to understand how culture affects our communication, and in turn, how it affects the organization operations. Now, what are the elements of cross-cultural communication? First is awareness, second is preparation, third is language, fourth is humor, fifth is openness. Awareness. Let's come to the first point. Now, for example, an executive is going for a meeting with a client from a different culture. So one must first be aware, of the other people's culture. What are, their cultural norms, their traditions, their values. So one should be aware of that, and also be aware of one's cultural biases, cultural stereotypes, because we are often shaped by all these kind of, our behavior is often shaped by what kind of stereotypes we have about people belonging to different cultures. So one should be aware of that. Next is preparation. This is important, when you're going to meet people, or when you are part of an organization where there are people from different cultures, then one needs to, or one is going for a meeting, as I said, for executive and a client. So one needs to prepare well, do some research, understand, what kind of culture they follow. For example, an American executive going for a client meeting with a Japanese. So one should be aware of, what kind of cultural norms, the values, the traditions that the Japanese person is following. That is very important. Now, language. Language, this is beyond words. Your non-verbal gestures, those are also very, very important. How you communicate with the people from a different culture. For example, some people from one culture might not be comfortable with a handshake, or some cultures, are low context cultures like the European cultures. They have a different way of talking, which might not be acceptable, or which might not go well with people with a high context culture that of the Asian cultures. So these kind of differences might be there, and one has to be really aware of that. Next is humor. Now, humor is something that helps to connect one individual with another, but at the same time, humor can also lead to misunderstanding. So what is a joke for an American, a Korean might find it very offensive, okay? Next is openness. One should be, do away with all the biases and all this stereotypes, and be open to and be open-minded, be flexible. So these are the 5 elements of cross-cultural communication. Next is the barriers. The first is the language barrier, then we have the non-verbal communication, third is the stereotype, the cultural bias, and anxiety. Language barriers is sometimes, there can be a misunderstanding rising from if people they have their own they follow different languages, and two people who follow different languages, they come together. Sometimes it is the language barriers which causes misunderstanding. Secondly, the non-verbal communication, our gestures, our behavior, sometimes this also can create misunderstanding. Your non-verbal gestures, especially the hand gestures, it could be the in the body language plays a key role here. Next is a stereotype. Now, sometimes, when an individual from a culture behaves in certain way, we tend to think that, people from that, all people from that particular culture also behaves in that way. Now, this is a kind of a cultural stereotype which leads to a lot of misunderstandings, and so one has to really work on that. Next is the cultural bias. This whole concept of my culture being superior from that is from your culture. This can give a lot of this can create a lot of misunderstanding. When people from one culture thinks that, okay, their culture is superior, so they can look down upon the people from belonging to another culture, which is very wrong, and it can lead to misunderstanding. Anxiety. Now, this is very common. Like when we meet people from different culture, there is always an anxiety at the back of our mind that I might be misunderstood. So this is also one of the common causes of one of the barriers of effective communication. Now, how to overcome this kind of barriers? First is assume positive intention. First, you have to think that the person in front of you mean well. So you have to assume positive intention. Next is control your biases, be flexible. As I have already discussed, like when we have to do away with our stereotypes. We have to do away with the biases. We cannot really follow the stereotypes. Like, if one individual from a particular culture is behaving, that doesn't mean that people from all the people from that particular culture would be behaving in the same way. And following by that is that you shouldn't be judgmental. You cannot really judge based on all these stereotypes. Next is adapting the language of the foreign culture. And I will also combine this with the other point, that is, you should be equip yourself with the language of the foreign culture. Now, for example, if you are going to meet your client who is from a different culture, you can at least learn some of the phrases, some of the words that will make the other person from a different culture happier, and it will show that you have keen interest in his culture. You have done some kind of a homework that will make the communication more easier, that will help in breaking the barriers. So this is important, that you learn certain phrases, the words, how you greet that person. You might use certain words or certain phrases. Next, if if your client doesn't understand the language you speak, then it is always advisable to use interpreters. And next is, you have to be keenly observant. You have to listen keenly and very empathetically. Being a good listener is always a very good skill. It shows that you are engaged in the conversation. You show interest you respect the other person, and you should always be eager to learn. You're eager to learn about other people's culture, rather than living with own biases and stereotype. Thinking that, okay, my culture is superior or your culture is inferior. But it's not that. You have to have that eagerness to learn. And next is slow down responses. This is also very important. It is not just for cross-cultural communication, but in general also. If we should actually slow down before reacting. first we have to understand, since there's a people from a different culture, so there could be some kind of a language barrier, or it could be some other reason that could lead to a misunderstanding. So before reacting, one had to slow down. Now, this is very important. The social media plays a very big role in cross-cultural communication. This social media platforms, it enables you to exchange, ideas among different culture, and it helps in fostering collaboration. But at the same time, it can also lead to misunderstanding. Now, most of the big organizations, they have project their images online. Now, one of the examples I will give you, Walmart 2024, they faced a huge backlash, and one of the reasons was why they used the images of Hindu gods in their many of their items like slippers and even swimwear. That did not go well with the Hindu community, and they faced a huge backlash. So this shows that you're culturally insensitive, did not even do a proper research. So this is very important, since brands are using the social media for their business purpose. And in social media, it's another drawback would be the unfiltered posts. As I said, cultural stereotype and cultural biases. Some person from a certain culture is behaving a certain way, so, and people try to post that okay, people from this particular culture are like this. So this leads to a lot of miscommunication, misunderstanding. And humor and slang, what is humorous in your culture, as I already explained, when I was talking about humor, that what is humorous in your what is considered a joke in your culture might not be offensive, might be offensive in other person's culture. And when you're using the language, make sure one cannot use slangs there, because that will offend the person from other cultures. Next, you have seen that we are using a lot of emojis, abbreviations on social media. Emoji-centric language has altered the vocabulary, you can say. But Gen Zs are using it, so it appeals to the youth. But at the same time, there would be people from a culture which is very formal. It might alienate those people. Okay. And so effective cross-cultural communication, it helps you in building trust, loyalty, and influence globally. So that's it. These are the references. Thank you.
Like, share, comment, and subscribe VNR Digital Learning Resource YouTube channel.